I'm in the naked barley breeding plots. On the left you have some normal barley, and on the right my variety of naked barley, not a proper variety but a selection called Oak Ruby. What makes it naked? Well, when you thresh the ears of normal barley you end up with covered grains like in the palm of my hand, and then when you thresh naked barley you end up with these naked grains that can be used for flaking or flour or whatever. The rain unfortunately has taken the golden colour away, so they're already looking a wee bit weathered, but they've managed to stay standing, well, most of the lines. What makes Oak Ruby special as a naked barley is that it's short and stiff strawed, just like the conventional barley varieties we have. A lot of naked barley varieties tend to be quite tall, they're not bred for UK conditions, and it's got beautiful long ears on it, and it threshes very well. My earlier lines, I'd always got them that the ones that threshed best, that didn't have too many hulls wrapped around the grains, tended to be either tall or low yielding. And Oak Ruby has got a reasonable yield, not as good as a normal covered malting barley, but not too bad. And Oak Ruby was from a pure line selection, just one plant and then multiplied up. The plot next to it is one of the new crosses. It's actually a population from Planet crossed with S6, which was one of my breeding lines. And you can see it's also short and stiff. It'll out yield Ruby a bit, but it's not pure. The ears are slightly different shapes and sizes, so it wouldn't pass as a proper variety. It's not too bad. This is another Planet cross, and again you can see these are reasonably uniform. These have been mass selected. So what I do, I'll take a bucket of ears that look good and multiply up from those. And another of the new populations, the new crosses. This is actually Ruby crossed with another modern variety, so it's an even better version of Ruby in some ways. The grains do tend to stain a bit more, so it's not quite as good Ruby there, but it's high yielding. And then this is one of the earlier crosses. You can see it's quite a bit taller. Probably got a bit better colour to the straw, and the grains should be a bit more golden. Just get it to focus. Yeah, so nice coloured grains there, but slightly taller, so straw maybe not quite so strong. We've got a black barley here. This is an Ethiopian black barley that I crossed with Ruby, and you can see it's got nice long ears like Ruby does, and it's still standing reasonably well. Most of the heads are black, and they will have black grains in them. There we go, nice black barley. This is a plot of the Ethiopian black barley that was one of the parents used in the black barley cross, and you can see it doesn't really survive in the wet Shropshire summer, and it's quite badly lodged, and it's starting to grow through. This is going to be a bit of a pain to harvest, but the cross was standing quite nicely. A couple of naked barley populations. This is the Oak Farm population, which is a mix of about 14 of my better crosses, and there's some Oak Ruby in there as well. These are all crosses that were either nearly as good as ruby, or maybe better than ruby in some respects but not in others. Not good enough overall to replace ruby. So I just mix them together and see how they get on, inspired by Martin Wolf as a composite cross population where you've got lots of different genetics in there. And this is another population, a more rainbow population. This is Tibetan and Ethiopian barleys that would otherwise lodge where you grow them on their own because they tend to be a bit tall and a bit weak. And it's got some ruby in there, and you can see the ruby's a bit shorter, quite a bit shorter and stiffer, and that's acting as scaffolding, and that allows us to grow these coloured grains and keep them standing. Unfortunately, there's a few challenges in cleaning the grain if you want to remove anything like ergot, which shouldn't be there, where you've got grains of different colours but also different sizes, because we see we've got some 6 rows in there, 6-row barley that tends to have quite small grains, and then we've got some 2-row barley which tends to have larger grains, so it's quite difficult to separate anything out. Another population, this is from one of my earlier crosses. It's a bit taller than some of the others, maybe a bit taller than ideal. Has very nice golden yellow grains, and it's not higher yielding than ruby. It doesn't stand as well, so this is one of the lines that I put into the oak farm population. Also keeping it as a line by itself as well, and it may be used for further crossing as well. Maybe if we can shorten it a bit, make it this bit stronger. This is a bit weird. It's a cross with one of the Japanese Uzu barleys, and the Uzu dwarfing gene makes these barleys with very compact ears. They've got very small round grains. It's a bit of a mix. You can see some normal types appearing in it as well. Keep having to purify it out. The Uzu plants aren't very competitive. That might make it useful as a mix, as a partner in intercropping. Maybe grow it with some peas or some lentils or something like that, a non-competitive barley. It's also quite stiff. And it produces these if it'll focus, quite round grains there. This is a Westminster cross. See a lovely golden straw. It's quite tall compared to the line next to it, and you can see there's a bit of ruffling there. It's not as strong as it perhaps it could be. Quite nice long ears, produces nice golden grains. Again, this is one of the components in the oak farm population. Along with this one, this is a ruby cross. If anything, it's even stiffer than ruby. So the grains, they tend to be a bit smaller, and they tend to get a bit more stained. So again, on its own, it's maybe not quite as good as ruby, but as a component in a mix, this stiff straw acting as scaffolding, mixed with this taller one here, then you might get something that's better than the sum of its parts, which is why I mixed some of these crosses all together to make the composite cross population that is the oak farm population. And the mass selection that I've been using, we select a bucket of the best ears, that has produced these populations which are pretty uniform in themselves, but you can see quite a lot of variation between the populations. We've got some tall ones and some short ones. And here we're back to ruby again. Nice long ears.